The engine is starting up.
For launch. GC, go. Guidance, go. Fido, go. Prop, go. GNC, go. Max, go. Eagle, go. Ecom,
go. Pending final steps to cabin link check.
3, 2, 1.
Is there anyone here that would like to communicate with us? Can you give us a sign?
Welcome to the Riftnationnetwork, the RNN, putting a slide in your glide and a dip in your hip. Welcome to the mothership, the home of the travelers of the universe. With shows throughout the week, you can find us at Instagram, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, and more. Everything you could want, everything you can need right here, right now. From the paranormal to the supernatural. From comedy to the spiritual. And now, your featured show. Shall we begin?
It's showtime, folks!
Podcast may contain material that some listeners may find sensitive, offensive, or disturbing. We strive to create respectful and informative content, but topics discussed may include mature themes such as violence, explicit language, or controversial subjects, triggering content including discussions related to mental health, trauma, or other sensitive issues, explicit language. Occasionally, our guests or hosts may use strong language. While we aim to handle these topics with care and empathy, we encourage listeners to exercise discretion. If you find any content distressing, consider skipping or seeking support. Remember that this podcast is not a substitute for professional advice. If you need assistance, please consult a qualified expert.
Welcome to the Forgotten Library, where the books whisper, the shadows listen, and the stories refuse to stay quietly on the shelf. I'm your host, Christina Spencer. And each month, we explore one novel together. With 3 one-hour live episodes of immersive, read-aloud chapters. Followed by a live interview with the author who brought the story to life. So find your favorite comfy chair, a soft blanket, and a hot beverage. Light a candle if the darkness scares you. And settle in for story time. Welcome to this week's live episode of Horror, History, and Hauntings Library.
Hi everybody. I hope everybody can hear me well. I'm using a loud mic for tonight. We're going to see if audio is a little better compared to what it was the last time. I've turned on the ambient music a little bit so you can hear me a little clearer, I hope. If anybody in the chat wants to give me a thumbs up or something, let me know that you can hear me and everything's good. Hi! That's Sundragon, nice to see you. But yeah, tonight we are actually going to do episode 1 because I want to give you guys the best experience, and I want to give everything I can to my authors to spotlight their wonderful works of art. So I figured if we had some issues with the audio last time, we'd just start again. We'll forget about the last episode, like it never happened. Tonight, my hot beverage of choice is hot tea. So make sure you have your hot beverage, your comfy pajamas. I forgot the blanket for my singling sweatshirt today, so Alright, so let's get started. I want to jump into everything. I hope everybody is having a wonderful winter time. That's the best way to put it. So let's bring on my co-host for the show. We might have to switch me with it. Oh, there we go. This skeleton's name is Jack. So let's make sure the audio is good. Looks like everything's running well. So we will dive into Eclipse, Part 1 by Derek Barton. On the back of the cover, the synopsis, it says, an ordinary life can change in an instant. A violent car crash shatters Mitchell's world. The aftermath unleashes something sinister within him, igniting a dark necessity to kill. Soon, Chicago trembles under the shadow of the Black Frost Butcher. 2 men are on a collision course, one fueled by compulsion, the other by duty. Only one will walk away. And the subtitle is When an Ordinary Man Breaks, a City Meets Its Butcher. So, yeah, the first thing I want to cover with his book is, of course, his dedication. It says, to my great friend, Brian F. Gotti, you have my eternal gratitude for the lessons in generosity and kindness you have taught me. Your awesome laugh and sense of humor will be sorely missed. While your flame may have been snuffed out prematurely, you positively impacted many lives around you. The light you brought into this world lives on in our hearts. We love you, brother. So that is the dedication. Also, let me see if I can find it again. Just had it. I wanted to do the notes from the author. Just so you know a little bit about Derek. Derek Barton grew up in Northeast Indiana, the typical introvert kid, closer to books than people, but grew up with a fascination for horror novels. His favorite authors were Stephen King and Dean Koontz at the time, and medieval fantasy writers Pierce Anthony and R.A. Salvatore, which I'm a big fan of Salvatore. I've read a number of his books, but not all of them, because there's lots. In April of 1996, he moved to Phoenix, Arizona, to find his own path. He has been married to his wonderful wife, Erica, since October 5th, 2012. They have 3 children, Jenna, Johnny, and Jessina, with 2 grandchildren, little Rudy and Joey. For more content can be found on the official author website at author.derekbarton.blog. It says, thank you so much for reading. I hope you've enjoyed this intense tale of terror so far, but we haven't got into it yet. Did you know reviews sell books? If you find Eclipse Part 1 exciting and thrilling, would you do me the honor of reviewing it on Amazon? It would be extremely appreciated. I would like to also give a sincere thank you and a nod of appreciation to T.D. Barton for all your copy editing and creative input into this story. You have always been the greatest rock in my foundation. Bradford Ellington, for your invaluable editing contribution. For his editing services, reach out to Bradford Ellington Author on Instagram. Christy Albridge for the amazing and terrifying cover art for the series. See her collections of pre-made covers or commissions her for an awesome cover like this one. You can find her on Facebook under Christy Hearts Nerds, which Christy Hearts plural, nerds, plural. Okay? So, with that being said, let's go ahead and start diving into the story. And I do apologize for having to start over, but like I said, I want to give you guys the best quality experience, and I want this to be a worthwhile, relaxing experience for everybody. And with all the issues with the audio, I just didn't feel like it was awesome enough, I guess the best way to put it. And just as a small housekeeping thing, because I am reading, I'll be looking down at the page, so I won't be able to see the chat. So when there's an actual break in the story, such as a chapter or a break in character or whatever, I will stop and then we'll check chat then. Okay? So, here we go. Prologue. Halloween, October 31st, 2025. A brutal windstorm had blown up out of nowhere. The weatherman on the radio stated, "Tonight, a severe thunderstorm has crossed into the valley. Please take shelter immediately. In my personal opinion, folks, in my 15 years broadcasting here in Chicago, I haven't seen a storm like this suddenly appear and have this much power. I urge everyone off the streets. Take your trick-or-treaters home now. Candy, after all, can be bought at the store." His rant was cut off by abrupt static, and then the station began an oldie, Little Red Riding Hood, by Sam Machine and the Pharaohs. Sheila looked in her rearview mirror and spotted Rascal. The red Doberman was nestled amongst her plastic shopping bags. They contained her last-minute supplies for Braden's Halloween costume. Some blue, white cotton, red ribbon spools, and a kit of cream paints. She bent down and tapped her cell phone. It read 4:55 p.m. "Damn," she fretted. "I only have an hour or so to put this together. Gary's coming from work, so maybe he'll be late picking them up." "Even bad wolves can be good," she sang along with the radio. "Is that true, boy?" she laughed as Rascal only yawned in response. As she crossed the center lane and turned onto I-57, bullets of rain pelted her window. The storm, fresh off Lake Michigan, picked up in its intensity. Crazy rolling thunderheads billowed and blew overhead. It grew prematurely dark. Her fingers strummed along subconsciously on the steering wheel with a tune. The air inside the car grew humid and stale as she had the camera's heater turned off. A high-pitched horn pierced her thoughts. Sheila instinctively cranked the wheel to the right as a red pickup zoomed past, narrowly missing her. The driver cursed and waved his fist at her. Sheila had obviously pulled out into his lane. Rascal barked from the back seat, scratching at the window. "Sorry, so sorry," she squealed, but of course the truck had already gone down the highway. Shaking from his reaction and the near collision, she pulled over to the breakdown lane to settle herself. "It's not my fault, right, boy? The storm is clouding everything, and I have no time to delay." Not too close behind her, she spied a set of headlights pulling into the breakdown lane to park. "See? Other people are having a hard time too," she said in her defense. Rascal whined in sympathy. She stretched out her arms and with one hand scratched him behind the ear. She felt ready. She shook her whole frame one last time and merged the car back onto the road. On the freeway, the speed limit was 65, but no one except the elderly drove that limit. She nudged her speed closer to 75. There were a few other drivers on the road, and the drive was smooth again. The radio began a new tune, sitting on the dock of the bay. She hummed again and began to enjoy the ride. Exit 78 passed by, marking the border to the small burg called Oak Forest. She smiled to herself in relief. Only 3 more exits, then I'll be inside. "Maybe a cup of French roast," she said. "How about a couple of strips of maple bacon, Rascal? Will that make it up to you?" Drag you out in red blue lights splashed all over the interior of the Camry. Her eyes darted to the rear view. A police cruiser was behind her, with its lights whirling. Her eyes went to the speedometer. It showed 79. Not too much over. Not normally worth hassling me, she thought. But it was raining pretty hard. With no other cars near her, she had no issues getting the vehicle pulled over to the side. She parked, turned off the car, and leaned over to dig in the glove compartment. "Driver, stop moving. Place your hands on the steering wheel immediately." The booming voice came through the cruiser speakers. She froze, shocked by the fierce tone in the voice. "Driver, stop moving. Sit up and place your hands on the wheel. I am not going to give you another warning." The voice was masculine, aggressive, and agitated. Okay, she said out loud. Rascal pounced around the Halloween packages and whined again in excitement. She sat still behind the wheel with her hands at the 10 and 2 position. A long minute went by, and finally a shadowy figure emerged from the cruiser. It was a man, all alone, tall with broad shoulders, a hat, and a gray rain poncho. He slowly advanced, checking the license plate, then lit up the back seat with his flashlight. Rascal went berserk until she yelled for him to stop. Come on, you're killing me. I need to finish Braden's costume. For God's sake, just write me up and let's go already." Sheila's thoughts cascaded around and around. He tapped at the window with the butt of a flashlight. She hit the button and rolled it down halfway. Rain splattered her immediately. She looked up but could only see angular shadows and a faint highlight on his face. Wide nose, sparse-faced eyes, and a bushy beard. She noted the fact that his mouth was set in a deep scowl. "Sorry, officer, to make you stand in the rain," she muttered, trying to be charming and get on his good side. "And don't worry about Rascal. He's too old for a fight." "All part of the job. License and registration, please." He ignored her attempt at charm. His voice was devoid of any humor. As she leaned over, she noticed his hand slide to his holster. He rested on top of the gun inside. It remained there as she handed him the paperwork. Without glancing at the papers, he said, "All right, Mrs. Glenn, can you step out?" "Are you serious? Is that really necessary?" He took a large step back from her door, rested his hand again on the leather holster at his belt. "Step out. I do not like to repeat my orders, Mrs. Glenn." Sheila sighed softly, more to herself than as a protest. She didn't like his tone and demeanor, but she understood that he wasn't to be pushed. More rain flooded the interior as she got out. Rascal whimpered and then emitted a growl. The storm itself took advantage of her appearance and increased in its fury. He slipped a hand around her forearm and led her to the back of the car with a firm grip. "I'm going to have to pass you down now. Any sharp objects or weapons on you I need to be aware of?" She shook her head as his hand roughly went over her shoulders and then down her sides. He removed her wallet and her car keys from her jeans pocket. She wasn't wearing a jacket, so she carried nothing else. "What is this all about exactly?" she cried out over the storm's cacophony. He seized her left arm and yanked it painfully high between her shoulders. The breath blasted from her lungs as he bent her over the hood. She heard the sound of metal handcuffs clicking shut. Then his heavy body was smothering her against the car. Leaning into her ear, he said, "Your husband, Gary, says he's sick of you, not being there for him or your son. Now, you will never be." He lifted off and threw a very heavy punch into her ribs. Then he kicked her hip with his boot to knock her to the ground. As she wheezed and writhed on the wet pavement, he popped open the trunk. Dimly, she heard Rascal furiously barking for the back seat. The officer scooped her into his arms and tossed her like a bag of trash into the trunk. The rain ramped up once again, and all the sounds were drowned out by the pounding flurry. Panic seized her, but she couldn't decide how to act. Her fight-or-flight instincts overwhelmed her, and he kept taking action before he could decide. He was calm, precise, calculated. Oh God, this is a routine for him. He's practiced this. He bent down close to her face. He had bright green eyes. One was all bloody from a burst blood vessel. His breath smelled of equal parts scope mint and Buffalo Trace bourbon. Her dad drank it often. A parting gift from me, he said as he showed her a long, black plastic zip tie. She was streaked as he secured it around her neck. Her final plea of, "No, don't do this, please," was cut off as he tightened the zip tie. It bit into her skin. Blood bubbled up around it as she clawed at it frantically. Her eyes bulged and her tongue stuck out obscenely. He muttered excitedly to himself, "I'm doing it! I'm getting my first! I'm doing it!" Time stood still. Every minute detail became super defined. Every color sharpened, and every sensation electrified and shot throughout his body. To Mitchell, the deed was over in seconds, but to Sheila, it seemed endless before her vision faded, colors blending, then going gray, and finally dissolving to an infinite black. The whole time, the man bounced from one foot to the other. He continued his stream of words. "I'm getting my first. I'm getting my first. Yes, all I planned precise. So easy." Chapter 1. 10 months earlier, on January 14th, 2025, Mitchell stared intently at the words on the bleached white paper. The dark red dot above the letter I was growing. The red pen in his right hand trembled. He was losing himself again. His mind slipped, then dove willingly into the red abyss. His eyes blurred, his head grew heavy, and his thoughts revolved around the small puddle of blood. No, not blood, ink, red pen ink. His inner voice scolded him. Another voice insisted, "No, it's blood, or it could be hot, thick, gooey, smooth. You can make this happen. You know where you could get all this blood." He imagined it flowing through his hands, a pool of it sloshing and washing up over his torso, flowing over his chest and up his neck. In his thoughts and in reality, he stuck out his tongue trying to get a taste of the hot liquid. "Whoa, are you Mr. Mitchell Michaels? Are you alright?" a student asked, standing in the corner of his desk. Mitchell shook his head, sliding back into the real world. His fourth period English class at Barton High School materialized before him. I'm sorry, what?" The student stared at him. It was 17-year-old Corey James. "Punk. He's always a smart ass." An inner voice, his darkest half, snarled at him. Mitchell murmured instead, "Mr. James, do you need anything?" Corey sneered. "Do I need anything? Man, you look like you were about to make out with that homework paper." "That's enough. If you're done with your work, please place it on the pile and return to your seat. Thank you." He grinned pleasantly at him, his mask as the earnest and generous Mitchell Anson Michaels slipped back into place. Corey scoffed, tossing the paper down and shuffling over to his cluttered desk in the back of the room. No one else had paid any attention to their exchange. The time remaining for their pop quiz was nearly over. Known among the school staff and his friends as Gentle Giant Mike, Mitchell stood at 6'4", weighed 260 pounds, and had a thick head of dirty blonde hair. His beard was kept short and trim. He towered over his students and most of the faculty, but his giving nature always won them over. Mentoring and volunteering his time had made him a standout among his peers. Most of his students thought the world of him. Mitchell returned to his work on the assignment he had been grading. His eyes glanced for a brief moment at that splotch of red his pen had caused. The ink had gotten on his fingers and thumb as well. He picked up the broken pen and dropped it in the basket at his desk. He shot a glance at the digital clock that hung on the wall behind the class. It was 12:14 p.m. 15 minutes later, the PA alarm signaled the conclusion of fourth period. School was half over for the day. That was good. The mild hangover from some happy hour drinks the night before had eroded his energy and his patience for the day. Brad Keller always convinced him and several of the other teachers that it would be a quick drink. The 29-year-old bachelor always had a charm and a presence about him that made it hard to say no. Mitchell liked and hated Brad Keller if that was possible. The smooth salesman in the history teacher was relentless. He actually envied the skills, as he was sure Keller also had a wild sex life. "Oh, come on, fellas, move a little," he would taunt them. Just like that, and with a snap of his fingers, he would smear them all. They would hit up old Mallory's Tavern on the way home. Drinks that would lead to an inevitable fast round of poker. "Not tonight, my friend," he whispered to himself as he traveled down the east wing hall toward the gymnasium. He had several menorah folders tucked under one arm, and from his right hand he carried a small silver briefcase. He pushed open the twin metal doors. Inside the gym, the senior-junior speech team waited. 10 anxious students sitting in the first 2 rows of bleachers. Next weekend, they would travel to Syracuse, New York. There, they would be presenting in front of an academic board of collegiate professors at the 2025 National Toastmasters Conference. "Sorry, guys, thank you for your patience." He walked to a desk placed before the bleachers. From one of the folders, he produced a small stack of papers. A moment later, he studied one sheet with red ink notations. "Let's see. Yes, Matt, we finished with your presentation on Chicago's guardian angel serial killer, correct?" "Yes, sir," the man answered. He sat at the far end of the second row. His hair was a mess of long curls that hung low down to his shoulders. A faint line of a mustache crossed his upper lip. Mitchell reviewed his notes once more. Then he said, "It seems pretty well researched, but I didn't find your final summary fully compelling or plausible. Despite the authorities never capturing him or her does not automatically mean that they are likely dead or incarcerated." But, Matt began, but his voice cracked. However, he pushed on with his defense, his shoulders slumped with a lack of confidence. "Compulsion is a common drive for serial killers. It's a fact that they can't stop. They won't stop unless captured or killed." "That might be true, but who can say if the guardian angel simply left Chicago?" Mitchell countered. The dark voice whispered, "What the hell do you know, shithead? Researching on YouTube? Is that your only skill?" Just then, the youth's jaw dropped, then closed with confusion. "I'm only saying that they could have restarted somewhere else. You need to include that in your final speculations for your presentation. Otherwise, I think you are ready." Mitchell tucked the paperwork back in his folder and scanned the small group. "Are we ready to begin? Who has not given their presentation yet?" Danny Coldren, a senior on one of the school cheerleaders, sat between her 2 closest friends, Shane and Courtney. She had dark brunette locks that cascaded down past her slight shoulders, a spattering of freckles on pasty white cheeks. and a mouth full of braces. Her hand slowly went up. Okay, Danny, where's your thesis? I selected the topic, Influential Leaders of American Conflicts. She paused and looked down at her clasped hands in her lap. She gathered herself, then said, I'm quite sorry, Mr. Mitchell. I have to confess I'm not quite finished. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. What's the issue? He asked, more curiosity than upset with her. That dark voice whispered in his head. What are you wasting my time with today? Danny was routinely one of his better students and was expected to compete for class valedictorian. Well, my father actually made the suggestion that I write about William Keith Kellogg. Wait, who? Are you talking about the owner of the cereal company? The words popped out in surprise. Laughter erupted from the group. Danny's cheeks grew even redder. She kept her head down, partially hiding behind her papers. Mitchell raised his hand to settle the group down. She continued, Well, yes. You see, my grandfather served in World War II, and he said that before Kellogg, the standard breakfast was grilled grits or porridge. All of these had various ingredients and had a lot of weight to ship. With the grain cereals that Kellogg made, the Army was able to streamline the breakfast. It saved on shipping costs, and the troops were constantly fed. It wasn't always the case before, and in other wars, supply shortages were devastating for troops. Anyway, my grandfather thought he would make an interesting person for my speech. Mitchell got up, walked around to the front of the desk, and leaned back against it as he folded his arms over his chest. I see. Let me guess the problem. You are having a hard time finding any information or articles to back that up, right? She nodded glumly. Okay, well, I can extend the deadline for you on this one. I can give you until Tuesday to complete the speech in time for our trip. You won't get time to practice it, though. He paused to see if the group was paying attention. Consider this a valuable lesson for all of you. People will always have personal experiences or ideas to suggest, but as a writer or journalist, you must have a discerning eye on the matter. Dissect it and get to the heart of the idea. Ask yourself, is this an important issue, or is this something I can find enough to write about? As in your case, Danny, it is an interesting idea, but right away it seems very limited in content. Do you think you can make a compelling speech on the idea of how cereal impacted the troops during the war? Is it big enough to showcase? Or are you working due to sentimentality? Is this worth pursuing, or are you writing it for your grandfather? You think I should find a different person to focus on? The voice in Emma's head whispered, Too many like her, filling this world up, taking up resources, shitting it all away. Too many stupid sluts like this to endure. I'm going to leave that up to you. If you can make the speech yours and fully articulate the importance of Kellogg's contribution, then do so. If not, you have 4 days, including the weekend, to jump ship. Thank you, sir, she replied gratefully. The voice crept back into his mind. Worthless sacks of shit. Stop! Mitchell scolded himself. These kids are young and naive, but there's potential. As their teacher, I'm responsible for molding and growing that in them. You are only being vile. He shook his head, gathered himself, and slipped an expression of patience and gratitude onto his face. You're welcome. I don't want you to feel extra pressure, but this is an important conference class. This will be something that not only will win you scholarships, but you can also detail it on your college applications. Let's knock this out of the park and really stand out this year. 6th period dragged on mercilessly. Wind kicked up outside, and a splatter of slushy ice and snow flurries pelted the windows along the south wall. An afternoon snowstorm had swept in off Lake Michigan. It was premature for this time of year, but most people in Chicago were to be ready for anything. The weather was always fickle in the Midwest, especially near the Great Lakes. He would have to take everything home versus staying the extra hours at the school to grade yesterday's homework and the pop quiz. Gina, his fiancée, expected him over tonight for dinner as well. Mitchell rolled his chair back from his desk and crossed to one of the windows. Snow had already fallen and gathered on the football field and near the parking lot. The skies were cold-rolled and overcast. A chill draft leaked through the frosty glass. He rolled his shoulders, stepped back, and went to a beige wall phone. Mitchell dialed an extension. Mr. Mitchell's here. Yes? Mr. Gordon? Yes, I think you should consider an early release. The weather outside looks pretty nasty. I imagine in a half hour the roads are going to be treacherous. His last words were drowned out by the uproar from the excited students. Mitchell waved at them and tried to minimize the noise in the room. All right, very good. Yes, you have a wonderful night too. He ended the call. A moment later, a sharp boo sound came over the intercom. Students, we're closing early today due to inclement weather. Please begin to make your way to the buses. Thank you. Hell yeah! Thanks, Mr. Mitchells! One student exclaimed. He was a small kid, lanky and slightly stooped. Zach Shepard, one of the school's top track stars, spoke up. May I use my cell phone to call my dad so he can come and get me early? Others quickly repeated the question, asking to also use their phones. Mitchell nodded. It was against school policy to use phones during school hours, but he saw no harm in it and allowing it now. School had been dismissed after all. A PA system bell rang out and made it official. The students filed out, laughing and overall giddy. They might be high school students, but inside they were all still just kids. As the last in line proceeded out, the Bergen High School's Bears star running back, Corey James, came up to his desk with another paper in hand. Hey, Mr. M, here you go in case you get lonely tonight. Enjoy! He flipped the paper onto his desk, cackling with laughter as he slipped through the door. The paper had a naked woman crudely drawn in red ink. Her legs were splayed open obscenely. The words "lick you" with a black arrow pointing to the way were above her. Mitchell swept it up in his hands and crumpled it, his temper beginning to growl. The storm outside also grew in strength and fury, as if feeding off Mitchell's mood. Now blinding flurries of fresh snow pelted the windows incessantly. He took a long sip of his coffee, settled back in his chair, and worked to calm his nerves. Thoughts of holding the boy's intestines in his hands filled his head. Corey was a typical kid. There was nothing abnormal, yet there was something about that mouthy teen that got under his skin. He was expected to do well in college football programs somewhere as a running back. For that reason, he barely made any effort with his assignments and tests. The plain digital clock on his wall displayed 12:45. He had to heed his own advice and started to gather his papers and texts into his work duffel bag. A few minutes later, he jogged with his hands up over his head to shield himself from the snow as he opened his gold Ford Thunderbird. He flung his bag into the back seat and waited behind the steering wheel. A few minutes later, he cruised down the I-83, keeping it slow and steady in the slick roadway. He dug out his cell phone. He knew it would be better to call him now versus when he reached the woody outskirts of Chicago. Cell towers were not as prevalent, and his reception grew spotty there. Despite the long, everyday drive to and from Bergen, he loved the time of isolation, the freedom it gave him. He would often listen to classical music or even lose himself in an audiobook. Sometimes, when the mood took him, he would allow himself a fantasy. A homicide would bloom in his mind like a black and thorny rose. He would spin the encounter in his mind in every gruesome detail and direction he could. Mitchell and Vile debated every angle. His two sides liked to work out the opportunities, challenges, and obstacles. He conjured every conceivable detail of how he would kill a person in a certain scenario. It was his darkest craving. He buried the needy feeling deep, like his victims in his daydreams. Vile kept appearing with a shovel so he could dig them up and dance with the corpses. He called his fiancée. The cell phone rang twice, and as expected, she picked up precisely on the third ring. Gina was a stickler for routine. She was frustratingly religious and frigid. Currently, she was a stay-at-home marketing executive for a long downtown law firm. Her hours were long, but at least she didn't have the hassle of commuting. Privileged. "Hey, honey," she greeted him. "How's your day going? Are you still in class?" No, it had to be called off early." "Wow, really? Why?" Vile's voice surfaced, blind, ignorant, and clueless. Mitchell shook his head. She had a kind heart and was very generous, but she would never be regarded as an intellectual. "You haven't noticed the weather?" The squeaking wheels of her computer chair could be heard as she scooted away from her desk. "Oh, yeah, okay," she murmured, obviously looking out the window of her small third-floor apartment. The weather station on the radio reported that there will be a record 4 inches of snow coming in tonight. You okay if I stay tonight after dinner?" She giggled. "Oh, you would use the weather as a way to parlay a reason to spend the night in my bed." Vile repeated in his mind, "Yeah, extortion is the only way it seems I can get sex from you." Vile mused bitterly. Mitchell cruised past a beat-up sign that announced it was 33 miles to Raymondville. He'd grab an overnight bag first from his condo and then head to Gina's place in Lockport. Guiding the Ford to the connecting ramp to merge onto I-171, he immediately found the road was caked with at least a half-inch of snow, and not yet packed down much from other vehicles. It was dicey as the black wheels fishtailed a bit. He eased off the gas and let it coast down to 30 miles an hour. I don't accept that as a rejection of my inquiry, Miss Dawson. I think you are the one who wants." His words faded as the road took his focus. Ahead, the tarmac angled up as it crested a small hill. He gave it some speed to help clear the top. However, on the other side of the hill, the road appeared to be cleared. It was spared the weather since it wasn't facing the common wind and storm. He kept the speed at 45 miles an hour when a streak of orange-brown color darted across the base of the hill. It was a large breed of dog. "A fucking Afghan," his mind screamed. It was far too away to identify it for sure as it bolted across to the center of the lane. Barrett froze and dropped something from his mouth in shock at seeing the car barreling towards it. "Shit!" Mitchell shouted in surprise. His wheels found no purchase. A hidden, thin sheet of ice covered the freeway. He slid into the other lane, then back into his own. The car's momentum carried it around and violently twisted it backwards. He panicked while trying to regain control, yanking the steering wheel on reflex, but the spin-out direction did not help. Gravel was ground underneath his tires, and the car jerked downward as he lurched from the shoulder. The Ford bounced and careened. Screams and pleas for Mitchell to answer Gina came from his phone, and he had been thrown and lay neglected in the back seat. Mitchell's hands were torn free from the steering wheel as he was flung over the center console. He crashed hard into the passenger window. His earlobe burst open and blood sprayed the interior with tiny droplets. He screamed in terror as he saw the massive tree trunk looming ahead. Before his world shut off like a television set unplugged, Mitchell launched forward and cracked the windshield with his head. He bounced back and crumpled into the wheel well. The front right fender took the majority of the incredible impact, but the rest of the car wrapped itself around the base of the tree. There were several lacerations along his cheek, temple, and the top of his skull. Blood poured out, hot, thick, gooey, smooth. A small pool gathered along his neck and shoulders. Alright, that ends chapter 1. I'm going to be sipping my tea. And then we'll dive into chapter 2. I hope you guys are enjoying the reading tonight. Alright, chapter 2. At first, Mitchell could only see flashing images between periods of darkness. A group of blurry, masked faces reached in and out, hovering over him. Then a series of bright, fluorescent lamps hung from dirty ceiling tiles came into view as his body was lifted and carried on a stiff stretcher down a narrow hall. An anguished, feminine voice said his name, but the owner stood too far away to be recognized. He had no sense of time or place. Every waking moment his body ached and throbbed in every painful way imaginable. His head felt as if it was split in 3 by blazing bolts of lightning. Finally, his body would plummet into unconsciousness due to the medication or simple exhaustion. Those bouts of darkness were peppered with disjointed dreams. There were nonsensical classes or long-winded lectures he gave to students he didn't even recognize. One dream he recalled he had been on a long excursion into a human jungle. Suddenly a horde of tiny humanoid creatures sprang from clusters of fern plants and chased him down one of the trails. He woke as several claws had found purchase in his shoulders and lower back. Now his eyes took in the sights of the hospital room, which was dim with heavy shadows. It was late at night in the ICU, but he could hear the shuffle of nurses making rounds or discussing medical files. Mitchell's eyelids were heavy, and the pool of sleep tugged at him. Yet the nightmare that had sent a jolt of adrenaline, he doubted he would sleep soon. Complex machines and overhead monitors rang out in disjointed rhythms and electrical buzzing. Lifting his head a few inches off the starched bedsheets, it gave him a chance to scan his body's condition. His right arm and leg were in casts, and a thick, padded wrap encased his ribs. At his brow, he felt sweat trickle and run down the back of his neck. Cotton bandages covered the majority of his head. He rested his head back on the stiff pillows behind him. In spite of all the injuries and the obvious fact that he was in the hospital, he was almost alarmed. He wasn't alarmed or upset. He slowed his breathing, relaxed his body, and began a mantra to focus his thoughts. While he was aware he was lucky to be alive, he couldn't quite recall how he had been hurt in the first place. So you see, Mitchell, while the cast can come off your wrist and leg roughly in 6 weeks from now, the ribs may take a little more time to heal and recover. Physical therapy will also be necessary to restore your hand movement. The small man droned at the foot of the bed. It's Mitch, he interrupted the doctor in a raised, stern tone. Pardon? My name is Mitch. Please? For all his life, even as a baby, everyone used his formal name and never shortened it. Yet upon waking from this accident, the full name, Mitchell Anson Michaels, did not feel right. It rang alien and foreign in his mind. He refused to use the longer version of his name any further. Certainly. Sorry, the doctor said, obviously taken aback by the vehemence in the statement. Dr. Bill Helen was East Indian with slick black hair and a thin, wiry mustache over his lip. Two brown warts on the left side of his chin distracted Mitch. A single stubby hair grew from one. It sickened Mitch and made his stomach churn sourly. Another side effect of the severe accident was apparently a heightened sense of detail. He found his eyes would focus and fixate on minute details, or the faintness of smells grew overwhelming. The sheets of the bed felt coarse and chafed his skin. As I was saying, I have issued orders for your transfer to an acute rehab facility. They'll transport you this evening. You should be healed enough to start the first of 3 surgeries. The depressed fracture that runs along here, he ran a callous finger down Mitch's right temple to indicate it. We will use stapling to secure it and to help speed up the regrowth process. Then a craniotomy up here on the forehead will be necessary to remove the embedded skull fragments. During that surgery, we will be assessing if a debridement is needed. Debridements are done to remove damaged or infected brain tissue. Then the final surgery is a bone flap replacement to restore any other shifts or dislocations of the skull plate. Jesus, Doc, he muttered. Am I going to be all right? You are under the best care in Chicago, and I'll be making weekly visits to the rehab to ensure your recovery is going as planned. The surgeries sound scarier than they really are, I promise. The brain damage you suffer can be handled. The movement in your arm and hand will resume by the end of the year. You are young. Your body can work miracles. You will see. Mitch shifted under the sheets. His back ached from a prolonged time in one position. How long do you think I'll need to stay in the hospital? I mean, the rehab facility. Normally, for one skull fracture surgery, you can expect a 12-week recovery period. However, since you suffered the dual crack, and adding in that time, you'll need manual movement therapy. It may take you through July or August. That is, of course, provided you don't have any infections or setbacks from the surgery. Mitch felt his shoulders slump as a huge weight settled upon them. The news hit him hard. His normal dark thoughts had descended into anger and misery. His life, as he knew it, was snubbed short and may be permanently altered. He was a prisoner to his body, and what it demanded now to rebuild and recoup. A dark voice whispered in his mind, Don't worry, you're free now. We have a lot to plan for in the future. New pleasures like you've never had before. The wispy voice spoke in his mind, as if somehow spoken behind him. It had an unusual feeling with it, like an itch you couldn't reach, yet not necessarily uncomfortable. The voice spoke again. Once you called me vile. I like that. You may address me as vile. I'm here now. You are free, and we are unleashed. Mitch grumbled and cursed at the small wooden square sitting before him upon the table. Why? Why does this take so much energy? Need a sip. Hold on. The square had 4 sets of bore holes filled with large silver bolts and hexagon nuts. The point of the object was for Mitch to unscrew the nuts as fast as his left hand could muster. Joanne, an obese woman with brown hair going gray, sat across the table from him with a timer. She was nearly as wide as she was tall. Trying to calm him, she says, Do what you can. This is only to see where you are. A starting point in your recovery. You'll see improvements soon, I promise. He scoffed in disbelief, but continued his efforts to coordinate his sleepy fingers. They would not grip the knot properly and kept sliding down and away from the post. Finally, he gained purchase and slowly twisted the knot off the second post. He sighed with a mixture of relief and frustration when he focused on the next bolt. He had been transferred from the ICU to to the Summer Meadow Acute Therapy Facility on the edge of Chicago. The long, rectangular room was open but cluttered. It contained several tables along the southwest corner, wooden plank tables with blue pads meant for physical therapy exercises in a white tiled area in front of the bank of windows that contained 3 shelves and 5 racks holding medicine balls of various weights. 3 minutes passed, and he dropped his hands on the tables, sweat glistening across his brow. "I'm done," he stated flatly. Vile said in his mind, "I'd rather waste my energy kicking your bloated body all over this floor than keep fumbling with that stupid exercise." The brain damage was similar to a stroke. It hampered movement with his left arm and hand. His recovery progress had been limited due to the broken left arm, along with the damage to his shoulder. All of it tested Mitch's willpower and patience. He discovered that since the accident, he had very little of each and he had a short fuse. His negativity and the occasional outburst or fit had garnered him a sour reputation with the medical staff. They had yet been able to convince him that he'd return to normalcy in the coming months. To him, this state was a new fact of his life. The accident had scarred him, disfigured his body, and left him broken. Inwardly, he mourned with deep regret. He doubted he'd ever be able to kill. That was pretty good. You got to the 6th, Joanne replied. It's only been a few days since you arrived. It may be a long road ahead, so you must try to have a little patience. A blue flashing light suddenly came to life overhead near the entrance of their therapy room. Code Greg Room 207, repeat, Code Greg Room 207, a female voice declared. Joanne leaped from her metal chair. I have to assist. Stay here, Mitch, and keep practicing. In 10 minutes, you would switch and do those planking exercises I showed you yesterday, okay? She rambled with distraction and bolted down the hallway without waiting for his response. The other 2 therapists in the room also left to answer the medical emergency. Mitch pushed the wooden square away from him in disgust, and then looked about the room. Only 4 other patients remained absorbed in their exercises. He scooted his chair back and stood. Vile whispered to him, "Yes, that's good. Take it. Take this opportunity. He'll be alone." Vile's voice whispered from within the dark confines of his mind, urging him on. The image of the elderly black man popped up. Mr. Coronel, Dwight Edwards Coronel, room 403, 2 rooms north of his own. 2 nights ago, Monday, January 28th, Coronel was brought in. The man had been injured in a fall in his grandson's home, along with a broken hip, the man suffering from long-term dementia. At 9:33 p.m. every night since his admission, Coronel began an unending tirade of cursing and indecipherable screaming. The medical staff had eventually been forced to sedate him. Quickly, Mitch learned that after 3 or more hours, the drugs would wear off and the litany of gibberish would play out all over again. At 5:47 a.m., Mitch demanded earplugs from the staff. He became so irate that he was also threatened with sedation. He stifled his true thoughts as he hated the fuzziness and mind fog that the drugs would bring. Being medicated would only delay his rehabilitation. Now, as he crept along the hallway towards the stairwell, he grew excited and anxious. His hand became sweaty and his heart raced with excitement. Vile said, "Can you do it? Are you hungry enough for this, Mitch?" I am. That old bastard deserved it. He's got it coming." Carefully, he poked his head inside the stairwell and scanned the steps leading up to the other floors. They were empty. He snuck through and ascended as fast as he could. His window would be short. Joanne and the others would surely be returning, or the nurse on their floor would be at her post. Vile whispered, "Yes, it has to be now. You know you won't have the chance again. Are you going for the blood? You could rub it on your face. You could maybe even taste it." "No, I'll be caught. I can't. I'll just have to be happy with just the act of silencing him." "But," Violet objected, and its tone was petulant, "if they find me covered in his blood, I'll never be allowed another opportunity." The voice went quiet. He poked his head in through the door to his floor, following the same scouting process. The room was dark, cold, and had that antiseptic clinical smell choking the air. A pair of monitors loomed over the bed. Wires and sensors were connected to Dwight's prone form. The man's heavy breathing rasped in and out, churning like an overtaxed engine. He was sedated and sleeping, oblivious to the world around him. Mitch stood only a few feet away. His body was rigid. Sweat trickled from his brow and temples. He repeatedly clenched and unclenched his large fists. Vile tried once more. "What do you want to do, Mitch? He's all yours for the taking." He did not respond. He remained frozen from the wicked combination of dark means versus anxious fear. A wrong move or an overlooked detail could result in an investigation leading directly to him. Mitch was incredibly intelligent and always thorough. In all of his imagined scenarios, he scanned them from every possible angle, every point of view. In his mind, he had all the time in the world to execute his precise plans. But here, in the murky gloom of the man's room, he didn't have time as a luxury. The pressure choked at his primal drive. His conflict paralyzed him. "Maybe I can get a pillow," he mused. "Are you fucking kidding? Right? You want to puss out with a lame smothering? No. Make an example of him. Make his mutation an affront. Throw it in their faces." Violet was seething. "What?" Mitchell gasped. Violet answered. "Show them all this is what you'll do when they stand in your way. They can't expect you to accept this bawling lunatic. Rip his face off. Put it on the chair by the door. Squeeze his throat till his eyes pop and then Enough! Mitch screamed inside his mind. His control clamped to the sides of his head. I am in control here. I decide when and how. You want blood? But I want more than that. I want more than one old tattered man who isn't even awake to scream for me. Vile, you answer me. The words came out in a torrent. His emotions were flooding and drowning out the inner dialogue. He was panting with effort. Only silence answered him. It was over. This was not going to happen. With a sigh of frustration, he opened the door and quickly retraced his steps. When Joanne returned, she found Mitch sweating and straining from his efforts to maintain the plank position she had trained him the day before. She stood over him with her hands balled up to on her hips. Bullshit, she cursed. I know you haven't been doing your exercises this whole time I was gone. Wise guy. Nice try. He laughed and dropped onto the mat. Now, after your torture toy you left me with, I had a coffee and a smoke break. I even snuck in a donut since you were gone so long. They laughed together. Everything work out? He asked. Yes. Miss Milana fell from her bed. She broke 3 teeth and tore her cheek pretty bad upon the countertop. Ouch. Poor thing, he said. Vile answered. The cow needed to be butchered, not pampered. The fact that she's nearly the weight of a goddamn Mini Cooper caused the all-hands-on-deck call. Took 20 minutes for 5 orderlies to help her back in bed. She shrugged. Anyway, we're out of time. Let's get you back in your room in time for lunch. Okay? And that concludes chapter 2. So we finished chapter 2 today. That concludes the reading for today. I do appreciate everybody and your patience and understanding with redoing episode 1. I think I'll be happier with how this turned out. I hope you guys will too. Like I said, thank you for tuning in. And as always, hold on. I want to say thank you for watching. Good night. And sweet dreams. Bye-bye.